How are you guys doing? Today is Monday, February 14th, 2022. I'm James Sims, and for this episode of The Elite, now that the final football game of the 2021-22 season is over and Super Bowl 56 is won, I'm going to use this episode to, of course, congratulate the 2021 Los Angeles Rams football team by, of course, going through their entire path to get all the way to the Super Bowl, where they were able to beat the Cincinnati Bengals to win their second Super Bowl as a conference. Taking a look, since the Super Bowl started, this is their fifth appearance. In 1979, they lost to the Steelers. In 1999, when I was in the building in Atlanta, they were able to beat the Titans, holding the Titans just 1 yard short in Super Bowl 34. And their third appearance was in 2001, where they would lose in Super Bowl 36 to the New England Patriots by a field goal. Their fourth appearance would be in 2018, where they lost to the Patriots yet again, this time by 10, when they were in Los Angeles instead of St. Louis. And then this is their first championship as the Los Angeles Rams, as this is the second time they were able to win a franchise title as a franchise. This is the first time they were able to win with Sean McVay as the head coach. And just to take a look at how these Los Angeles Rams were able to make it here in the first place, the Los Angeles Rams finished the 2021 NFL season with the best record in the NFC West. It was the only division in the NFL that had three teams go, as the AFC and NFC were, of course, expanded so that 7 teams from both conference could make it in. The Rams were able to make it into the playoffs alongside the Cardinals and the 49ers. They finished with the 4th seed in the NFC. Taking a look at their statistical leaders and the players from their team that would be named Pro Bowlers this year. On the offensive side of the ball, their passer, of course, was Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford would end up throwing for 4,886 yards on the season. That will be the third most passing yards in the NFL this year. He would throw for 41 touchdowns, which was second in the NFL behind Tom Brady. And he would be tied for the most interceptions in the league, as he threw 17 of them. This would be his very first season with the Rams, as this last season he ended it being the Lions quarterback. But then the Rams traded Jared Goff and a couple of first-round picks, and it immediately paid off for them. The Rams' leading rusher, of course, was Sony Michel. He would finish with 845 yards on the ground, and he would finish with another 140 or 130 yards through the air, giving him just under 1,000 total yards of receiving and rushing for the entire year, as he was one of 3 Rams in the full-on attack to help them establish himself as one of the best offensive teams in football. The Rams' receiving leader was the NFL's receiving leader. Their lone Pro Bowler on the offensive side of the ball was their elite wide receiver, Cooper Kupp. He would finish with the NFL's lead in receptions with 145. He finished with the league high in receiving yards with 1,947, as he came very close to passing Calvin Johnson for the most receiving yards in a season with one more game, as this was the first season that the NFL was expanded to 17 games for each team. And Cooper Kupp would finish with 16 receiving touchdowns, as he led all NFL receivers in that as well. He would, of course, go on to be named, like I said, he was their only Pro Bowl on the offensive side of the ball. On the defensive side of the ball, their leading tackler would end up being Jordan Fuller. He finished with 113 of them. Their leading sack getter was Aaron Donald, their go-to defensive tackle out of Pittsburgh. He would finish with 12 and a half sacks. He would be named to the first team All-Pro this year for the 7th year in a row, and he, of course, was named a starter for the Pro Bowl this year. Taking a look at Aaron Donald's career, this would be the 8th time that he's been named a Pro Bowl since his rookie season. Jalen Ramsey at corner would lead the team in interceptions. He had 4 of them. And he would also be named to the Pro Bowl for the 5th consecutive year, as he was named first team All-Pro at cornerback for the 2nd year in a row, just to get a sense of how good he is. And then the Los Angeles Rams' place kicker will go on to be named a Pro Bowler as well, as Matt Gay was a big part of the reason that the Rams were able able to squeeze their way into the Super Bowl and help them win as well. So just to get a sense that the Rams were a very well-rounded attack, even coming in. And In the middle of the season, they were able to pick up Odell Beckham Jr., who I've made an elite profile for in the past, and they were also able to add Von Miller, as Von Miller and Odell Beckham Jr. agreed to link up, and they decided that Los Angeles was going to be the city that they were going to link up in. So congratulations on the Los Angeles Rams for at least putting that team once they made it into the playoffs. They finished with the best record within their division. So going in, they had the 4 seed, and because they had the 4 seed, they had to play against the team that had the best wild card record, the 5th seed in the NFC, who were the AFC Cardinals from within their own division. And of course, the Rams hosted the Cardinals for this one, and the Rams beat the Cardinals. The Rams would score the first 4 touchdowns of that game to get the wild card round started against Kyler Murray, who was named a Pro Bowler this year. Matt Stafford threw a 4-yard touchdown pass to Odell Beckham Jr. in the first quarter to get the scoring started. It was 7-0 at the end of the first. After a 1-yard touchdown run from Matt Stafford and a 3-yard interception return from David Long Jr. out of Loyola High School, my alma mater. I mean, he was in my AP Environmental Science class. Congratulations, David. At the half, the Rams were up 21-0. In the third quarter, Matt Stafford's 7-yard touchdown pass to Cooper Kupp would put the Rams up 28-0. On the losing side of this matchup, the Cardinals were able to score their only touchdown in the third quarter. After 2 field goals from the Rams in the fourth and 1 from the Cardinals, the Rams would end this game with a 34-11 win. They won it by 23 to ease their way into the second round. In this matchup, Matt Stafford would end up completing 13 of his 17 passes as he threw for 202 yards and 2 touchdowns. Sony Michel would be their leading rusher. He had 13 carries for 58 yards. Cam Akers had 55 yards on the ground and a 40-yard reception, so he had 95 yards of offense. Their elite wide receiver, Cooper Kupp, would finish with 5 receptions for 61 yards and a touchdown. Odell would finish with 4 receptions for 54 yards as he had the team's other touchdown. On the defensive side of the ball, A'Shawn Robinson finished with 7 tackles. And their elite pickup, Von Miller, at defensive end, would finish with 6 tackles as he had a sack for himself. David Long Jr.'s pick 6 would, of course, be matched with Marquise Copeland. And then, of course, their Pro Bowler, Matt Gay, would make both of his field goals for the day as the Rams eased through. Once they made it to the NFC divisional round, they would face off against the defending Super Bowl champs, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, led by Tom Brady, in what would be Tom Brady's final game to now because he is actively retired in the NFL. After Matt Gay would kick a 26-yard field goal and the Rams would see a 7-yard touchdown pass from Matt Stafford to Kendall Blanton, the Buccaneers would see Ryan Suckup kick his lone field goal of the first half. The Rams would go on to score another 17 unanswered points as Matt Stafford threw a 70-yard touchdown pass to Cooper Kupp. Matt Gay's field goal would end the second half with the Rams up 20-3. The Rams opened the third quarter with a 1-yard touchdown run from Matt Stafford. And then after the Buccaneers would score 24 unanswered points in the second half, the Rams would drive it down the length of the field within the final minute and set it right where they needed it for Matt Gay to be one of the 4 kickers or to help the Rams be one of the 4 teams to get through and advance to the divisional round, to the championship round on the very last play of the game, just to give you a sense of how close it was. And looking at how the Rams fared in Tom Brady's final game, Matt Stafford would complete 28 of his 38 passes. He threw for 366 yards and 2 touchdowns in Tampa against the defending champs. He also ran for 6 yards and a touchdown. He would have 372 total yards and 3 touchdowns on the day. Cam Akers had 48 yards on the ground and 20 yards through the air, so he had 68 total yards of offense. Their elite wide receiver, Cooper Kupp, had 9 receptions for 183 yards and one of the team's 2 touchdowns. Odell Beckham Jr. had 6 receptions for 69 yards. Tyler Higbee had 4 receptions for 51 yards. Kendall Blanton would finish with 2 receptions for 18 yards as he had one of the 2 touchdowns. On the defensive side of the ball, David Long Jr. and Darius Williams would finish with the team's high in tackles. They finished with 7 of them. Aaron Donald, their goated defensive tackle, finished with 5 tackles, a sack, and 2 tackles for loss. Von Miller, their elite defensive end, finished with 4 tackles, a sack, and a recovered fumble. Leonard Floyd had 4 tackles and a sack as well. The Rams as a team was able to sack Tom Brady 3 times. Nick Scott was able to get his interception alongside his 5 tackles. Matt Gay would go 3 for 4 as a kicker, at least on field goal attempts, but he was able to make the field goal that most definitely counted. And following this win, the Rams were able to sneak their way into the NFC Conference championship, and they were able to face off against the San Francisco 49ers. As in this playoff run, they were able to beat both of their division rivals and made it into the playoffs, as the Niners were the lone road team to win in the wild card round. In this NFC Championship game, the Rams hosted the 49ers. The Rams scored first as Matt Stafford threw a 16-yard touchdown pass to Cooper Kupp in the second quarter. The Niners would score 17 unanswered points going into the fourth quarter. They were up 17-7. The Rams would see Matt Stafford throw a 11-yard touchdown pass to Cooper Kupp to get them to shorten their deficit to 3. With about 7 minutes left, Matt Gay would make another field goal to tie the game up at 17, and then the Rams would drive it down the field again and see Matt Gay kick a 30-yard field goal to put the Rams up 20-17, and their defense would eventually hold up, and they would win this game to advance to the Super Bowl. I'm looking at how they fared statistically in the NFC Championship game. Their starting quarterback, Matt Stafford, would throw for 30. He would complete 31 of his 45 attempts as he threw for 337 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. He also had 8 yards on the ground. He had 345 total yards of offense. Cam Akers had 13 carries for 48 yards. He also had 2 receiving yards. He had 50 total yards of offense. Their elite wide receiver, Cooper Kupp, had 11 receptions for 142 yards and both of the team's receiving touchdowns. Odell Beckham Jr. would have 9 receptions for 113 yards. Kendall Blanton finished with 5 receptions for 57 yards. Eric Weddle would lead the team in tackles as he had 9 of them, as they were unable to log a sack against the Niners offensive line. And Travin Howard would finish with 2 tackles and the team's lone interception. Matt Gay as a kicker would end up going 2 for 3 with his field goal attempts, as he made all of his extra points, of course. And with this win, the Los Angeles Rams were able to advance to the Super Bowl. And after their 2-week stretch, they would face off against the Cincinnati Bengals, who had displayed a good amount of magic on the AFC side of this playoff picture, as they had beat the 1 and 2 seeds in the AFC, the Titans and the Chiefs, to make it here. In addition, they also beat the Raiders, the best wild card team that didn't win their division. But in this matchup, the Rams would beat the Bengals 23-20 in order to win their second Super Bowl in their franchise's history. The scoring was opened, of course, with a 17-yard touchdown pass from Matt Stafford to Odell Beckham Jr. After Evan McPherson's 29-yard field goal, the Rams would extend their lead with a Matt Stafford 11-yard touchdown pass to Cooper Kupp. The PAT hold was bobbled, so they weren't able to convert it, so they were up 13-3 at the time. Joe Mixon would end up throwing it 6 yards to T. Higgins to put the Bengals down by 3, but the Rams went into halftime up 13-10, and of course, not to mention the halftime show was in LA by LA artists. It was a very LA day, so I got to mention that as well, because this is all tied into the same story. In the third quarter, Joe Burrow threw a 75-yard touchdown pass to T. Higgins in what many considered a very controversial no call. And then after another field goal, the Bengals were up by a touchdown. The Rams ended the third quarter with a 41-yard field goal from Matt Gay as they were down by 4. And then Matt Stafford threw a 1-yard touchdown pass to Cooper Kupp with about a minute and a half left after a couple of seriously drastic penalties on the side of the Cincinnati Bengals defense. And the Rams defense on the other end was still able to hold tight, as the Rams were able to walk away with the second Super Bowl in their franchise, their first win in Los Angeles Rams history. On the winning end of the Super Bowl, their starting quarterback, first-time Super Bowl champ Matt Stafford, would complete 26 of his 40 passes as he threw for 283 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 2 picks. And, of course, he would lead the game-winning drive for them in their home stadium in front of their home fans. The Rams' leading rusher this game was Cam Akers. He had 13 carries for 21 yards. He also had 14 yards through the air. That's 35 total yards of offense. Their elite wide receiver, Cooper Kupp, finished with 8 receptions for 92 yards and 2 of the team's 3 receiving touchdowns. He would be named the Super Bowl MVP, on top of being named the NFL's Offensive Player of the Year and being named a Pro Bowler, first-team All-Pro, and leading the NFL in receptions, receiving yards, and receiving touchdowns. Very fitting end to an amazing season for him. The Rams starting wide receiver on the other end, Odell Beckham Jr., finished with 2 receptions for 52 yards and a touchdown before he ended up having to go into the locker room because he got hurt. He had a knee injury. And then on the defensive side of the ball, Darius Williams was the Rams' team's leading tackler. They finished with 7 sacks on the day. Ernest Jones finished with 7 tackles on the day as he had a sack. A'Shawn Robinson finished with 6 tackles on the day as he had a sack. Leonard Floyd had 5 tackles as he had a sack. And then their elite duo, their goated defensive tackle, Aaron Donald, who finished with 4 tackles and 2 sacks. 2 tackles for loss, and then Von Miller, their elite defensive end, who was the MVP of Super Bowl 50, I believe. He would finish with 2 tackles as both of his tackles were sacks. And their kicker, their Pro Bowl kicker, Matt Gay, would end up making the only field goal attempt that was needed of him. And with this, the Rams are now the champions until, of course, Super Bowl 57. But with that said, I want to take this time to congratulate the 2021 Los Angeles Rams, as they really did what was necessary, made a lot of moves within the last year since their last year ended to get from where they were last year to where they are this year as the champions of the football world. And with that said, I want to thank the ESPN and NFL websites for giving me all the facts and figures for this. And I want to congratulate all the players involved. It was a long grind. Congratulations to the Cincinnati Bengals as well. They are the reigning AFC champs, and they have a lot of good years ahead of them. And with that said, I can't wait to see what happens between this championship and the next one. With that said, I want to thank everyone for listening. Once again, today is Monday, February 14th, 2022. I hope all is well, and I will catch you with hopefully another championship profile this time next year. Let's see if it's the Rams. Let's see if it's not. Peace out.